listening to the Betmaker Show. This is the College Football Mountain West Team Season Totals Preview for Thursday, August 8th, 2019. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of the Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
All right, folks, time for another college conference preview. And I'm Brian Blessing in Las Vegas. And as always, joined by the one, the only, Bruce Marshall, the legendary publication, The Gold Sheet. And we're going to talk about the Mountain West. And basically, Bruce, these are teams that come right through our backyard. And I know you went to Mountain West Media Day. It is a conference you are very familiar with.
Yeah, and it's pretty colorful, and we stretch across a lot of time zones thanks to Hawaii being in the league. But some interesting coaches here, and usually hold their own in bowl games. And usually the winner of the Mountain West gets in the mix for that group of five bowl assignment that goes to teams from the non-power conferences, the top team. And we've seen Boise do that before, and Fresno has threatened in the past. And the champion team here is usually in the mix for that. So there's some good quality play mid-level here in the Mountain West.
All right, we start in the Mountain Division, and Air Force 5-7 record the last 2 years. The last time, Bruce, they had a three-year losing record. You got to go all the way back to 1981, so I would bear that information. And I think this could be a bounce-back year, and they did lose a lot of close games last season.
They did. This is a team I got circled as one that could make a move, and we've seen Troy Calhoun do this before. I mean, they were close last year, like you said, some close losses, 5-7. They lost a couple games where they really should have won. And this year, though, with a fairly experienced team for an academy to come back, especially on defense. I mean, I can't remember Air Force ever ranking 16th in the nation against the run, or if they ever had a nose guard like Mosesi Fafita, who weighs over 300 pounds. They used to not have guys that big at the academy, but they've changed the entrance requirements here somewhat. And that's the sort of defense that they have. It's much better than we normally have. If they could have a playmaker emerge in the secondary like Weston Steelhammer a few years ago, it could really help. They think the senior strong safety, Garrett Capilla, might be that guy. But what I really like on the Air Force side is the offense here with a quarterback that is a playmaker. Now, they have sort of lacked home run hitters the last couple of years on offense, and that's what a Calhoun attack really needs, is this the variation of the option that they use. Donald Hammond, the third, is that sort of big play threat. We saw him down the stretch take over the job from Isaiah Sanders last year, put up some very good numbers. He has already guaranteed a win over Army, and you know how that goes in that commander-in-chief rivalry, so that's big stuff. They do get Army at home this year. And Calhoun has been a very good dog, by the way. In the past, he's 17-7-1, getting points the last 4 years. 2 games in September at Colorado and Boise State are very interesting. That used to be a game they played almost annually with the Buffs. They haven't faced CU in 44 years, though. 1974 is the last time, so they're kind of buzzing along the front range about that one. I like Air Force a lot. I think they're a sneaky good team this year. They'll give point spread value like they always do with Calhoun, and I think they're back in the bowl mix and maybe a threat even to steal this East.
Bruce, just a lot of good things to say about Boise State, plus 120, favorite to win the Mountain West Championship game. The bottom line is 8 or more wins since 1998. Great news, 20 underclassmen started last year. It's a favorable schedule. Brian Harsin is the big fish in a small pond.
Yeah, he is, and they're very happy. Harsin, to this point, has decided to stay there. Now, all of his predecessors moved up, whether it be Chris Peterson, who has done very well at Washington, Dan Hawkins, who didn't do all that well at Colorado and is now at UC Davis, and Dirk Cutter, who's had a variety of jobs, including NFL head coaching jobs. So that's the immediate legacy there, coaching-wise, at Boise. But Harsin will have his chances to leave, but so far he's staying there. You're right, they've got a lot of underclassmen who saw action last year. They've got 16 starters back. One they don't have, though, is Brett Rippon, the quarterback, and we've seen him for the Broncos do some nice things in the summer in the NFL preseason, but he'd been a 4-year starter for them, and he posted a lot of yards and throwing the football. So they've got to figure out who's going to be at quarterback. Cord, the sophomore, comes back. Very little work last year. He's more of a dual threat. They like Bachmeier, the freshman coming out of California. So if Harsin can figure that out, that would be good. I think a key game for them, actually the first week, before we get to, they've got August 31st, Florida State, and then Thursday night game with Marshall. If they can split those two games, they're doing very well, and then it could be takeoff time after that. But the track record is there. Boise's very tough. One thing you watch, though, they have not been a great favorite, though, on the blue carpet there. They have been overvalued, and they've only covered 16 of their last 51 games at home. So they usually land big points, and in recent years, that's been a little bit too much to ask.
It was a painful year for head coach Mike Bobo at Colorado State in more ways than one. 3 wins in 2018, graduation hurt, but he had a solid recruiting class, and 6 true freshmen started last year. So maybe light at the end of the tunnel here for the Rams?
Maybe, and you mentioned that pain literally and figuratively for Bobo, because he had some medical issues dealing with his hands and his legs and his feet. It was hard for him to walk. I mean, he was kind of shuffling last year, and he's gotten a little bit better, but he had some medical issues last year as well that made things all that more difficult. I think he's on the hot seat here, though, Brian, because they have dropped off pretty precipitously, and down to 3-9 last year, and the defense was absolutely miserable. And he still kept his coordinator, Jancic, for a second year, but they were among the worst teams all across the board on defense last year. So they have got to improve that. They've also got to improve a -10 turnover margin. It will help if Colin Hill, their quarterback, can stay healthy. He has had injury issues for much of his career, and that will be important. But this is going to be tough. I mean, and if Bobo doesn't get close to 500 this year or back to a bowl, I think they might be ready to make a change there in Fort Collins, because this program has been downward trajectory since the middle of the 2017 season when it all started to jump the rails there, and I'm not sure they're going to recover this fall.
Another coach feeling a bit of heat is Bob Davie. Last 2 years, JUCO route last year, it didn't work, and he's doing it again. He's got 2 new coordinators. One thing better should take note of, Davie's actually pretty good as a favorite, but he's pretty rugged as a dog.
Yeah, and the Davie is still here. I mean, this is an upset like, Buster Douglas over Mike Tyson. I would have never thought he returned after a 3-9 mark last year, especially since last summer, the 2018 summer at Mountain West Media Days. I mean, Davie himself was talking. He said, yeah, I probably got to win this year. They might fire me. I mean, he was actually talking about that, and they didn't win, and they didn't fire him. And he had also been suspended by the school earlier in 2018 for some sort of a violation. So, I mean, it looks like a rocky situation there. And I think this sort of peaked for Davie a few years ago at New Mexico. I think he'll be back in the broadcast booth next year. His coordinator, Bob DeBest, left last year for Georgia Southern, and they were running a lot of pistol and option stuff at the best. They got away from that last year. They weren't running the football worth a lick. They had some injuries at quarterback. Now, Tuioti, who was one of the guys hurt last year, was only in for a couple of games. He is the better thrower, and Sherron Jones is the better runner. But they'd like to use them both. But it looks like this situation is just going the wrong direction. The defense was pretty poor as well. By the way, interesting schedule. They do go to Notre Dame, Davie's old employer, in mid-September. That may not be pretty for the Lobos, but I'd be surprised if Davie is not in the broadcast booth somewhere next year.
Betmaker, let's make some money tonight.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com. Now, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Matt Wells is gone from Utah State. Did a wonderful job there. Guess who's back? Gary Anderson. Graduation hurt the offense, but at least the quarterback is back, Bruce, and they love the kid.
Yeah, Jordan Love. I mean, he's a playmaker. I mean, he put up some huge numbers last year. I mean, 32 TD passes, just 6 picks, almost 3,600 yards passing. But the big story, like you said here, it's back to the future in Logan, and not Michael J. Fox or Christopher Lloyd from the movie. It's Gary Anderson, like you said, coming back after he really resurrected this program a few years ago before he moved on in his career to Wisconsin and then Oregon State. He always, though, he's a Utah guy at heart. That's his roots in the region there, and he kept his house in Logan, so it was an easy fit for him to slide back in after Wells took the job at Texas Tech. Wells had been his protege, and Wells has left a pretty good thing behind, like you said, though the offense has got a lot of reloading to do. They do have maybe the best quarterback in the Mountain West in Love. We mentioned his stats a moment ago. Defense, pretty gnarly. It's always been good at Utah State, at least since Anderson was there. Wells maintained that. They've got 7 starters back, including most of the front 7. So, and Anderson is a defensive specialist. This was a really good fit. The systems they're running are going to be pretty much the same. The transition is not going to be that difficult. Utah State has an interesting opener at Wake Forest. This team won 11 games last year and was almost as good against the spread as it was straight up. So it's a lot to live up to, but they're still pretty good, and they'll be a factor in the East.
And we wrap up the Mountain Division with Wyoming. Craig Bowles got young players that got experience last year, and they actually won their last 4 games, Bruce. Do they carry that momentum into this year?
They might, and a correction on my part, it's the mountain half, not the east half, like I said. I'm going to go with the Utah State. So definitely the mountain half here. And the momentum late, it wasn't enough to get Wyoming bowl eligible. They were a little upset with Laramie at the Mountain West and Craig Thompson, the commissioner, for not finding a spot for them at 6-6. They did close fast, like you said. The encouraging thing was late last season, it looked like maybe Bowl finally found his quarterback going forward here as Sean Chambers came in late and helped spark that late rally. He then got hurt right before the end of the season, but he showed enough that he could be the sort of fit that Josh Allen was. Now, that's saying a lot because Josh is in the NFL now. But to run the offense, and this is a throwback offense. Bowl has got Nebraska roots back to Bob Devaney, and that's the sort of offense he runs. So the fact Josh looks so good there, I thought really was a credit to him to look like an NFL quarterback running this offense. But Chambers does some of the things that Bull likes. He can run, and he's going to have a lot of pressure on him this year because there are not a lot of starters back on offense, nor are there on defense. But it was a defense that was pretty gnarly last year, ranking 28th in scoring, 19th overall. And so, I mean, they slow the games down. They just play a style that is a little difficult to handle. Interesting opener for them, too. Missouri makes a very rare trip out to Laramie, and that is a rare trip. You're playing at over 7,000 feet. Missouri's never been out there, and they're breaking in a new quarterback. And Bowl is getting about 14 points in that opener. So I would keep an eye on Bowl because they've been a good underdog. I don't think they're a threat to win this mountain half of the loop, but they could be pesky and certainly worth a look as an underdog.
All right, we go to the West Division, Bruce. Fresno State, they've been in the league since 2012. All they've done is win 3 league titles. Tedford knows what he's doing, always with a good offense. But only 3 offensive starters return. Favorable schedule, though.
Yeah, although the first 2 are kind of tough. I mean, they've got to go to USC, and they're getting some points there. And Tedford's been a great underdog and point spread coach, especially on the road the last couple of years. They've only lost 1 point spread decision away the last 2 years, counting the bowl games that they won each time as well. So he's been a revelation. And Tedford took over a situation that was 1-11 when he took over in 2017, and here he's turned this thing around fantastically. However, like you mentioned, a lot of replacing to do, a lot of graduation last year. I mean, decimated the offense pretty much. And the quarterback, McMarion, who was the transfer from Oregon State, who really stabilized things for the last couple of years, he has moved on as well. So it's going to be a little bit touch and go at the start there. Jorge Reyna played well at the last year, but now he's probably going to be the guy. Rivers ran for over 700 yards last year, so he's a feature back who is still in the mix, but it's a pretty new offense overall. What has helped Fresno in recent years, though, has been defense, and that is the big shocker about this recent resurrection there for Tedford there, and he had to change his coordinator who moved back to the CFL after his first year, but Bert Watts kept things going last year, pretty much the same. They ranked 3rd in scoring defense nationally. They'll still be pretty gnarly on that side of the ball. I just wonder about this offense, Brian, and those first 2 games in particular with USC and Minnesota, if they're going to be up to speed enough to trade points in those first 2. But you have to respect Tedford for the job he's done, and the point spread mark has been especially good, especially on the road.
Bruce, look out for Hawaii. Tons of experience coming back. They started like a rocket ship last year, and they kept it under wraps. But Cole McDonald, the quarterback, was slinging it all over the place. Then he was awful, and I don't think the word was really out. I mean, he was banged up all over the place to the point where he actually had internal bleeding going on. This guy can play. The offensive line is intact. The question always is, can they play D?
Yeah, those are all valid points here. And you're right, McDonald through September last year, I mean, he was putting up record-breaking numbers. I mean, he looked like, the numbers like David Klingler used to put up at Houston many years ago, and he was on track to shatter everything. But the injuries took hold then, and you're right, he had some serious problems there. And he kept playing later in the season, but it's obvious he wasn't the same. They have a backup from the islands there named Shaven Cordero, who actually came in and bailed out the Rainbow Warriors in the Wyoming game. Comes from the same high school as Mariota and Tua Tagovailoa from Alabama, so they like him as a backup in case McDonald goes down. But McDonald is the guy. You mentioned defense. Here's a plus. 9 starters are back on defense. And also, Coach Rolovich, who one of our favorites at Mountain West Media Days, he's kept his whole staff intact. And that's something for Honolulu. It is so darn expensive to live there, and it is very hard for assistants to stick around. So there's been constant merry-go-round, whether it be for Rolovich or Norm Chow before him. But he's got the same staff there 2 years in a row, and I can't underline how much that is a benefit to a program like that. One more thing. At Mountain West Media Days, Rocky Long came out and said he would make Hawaii the favorite in the West. He was effusive in his praise about the Rainbow Warriors. So I'm with them there. I think Hawaii's going to be back to the local bowl and the Hawaii Bowl. And they start off in week 0 against Arizona, and they're laying a trap on August 24th for Kevin Sumlin. Look out, Cats. Hawaii's waiting for you at Aloha Stadium.
Nevada, Jay Norville's the head coach, 8 wins last year. Offense seems to be on the improve, but there's questions at the quarterback position. The D's pretty solid. Is it a program trending up?
Yes, they've trended up, but you wonder if they're going to take a little pause this year because it came together with a pretty experienced lineup, including a quarterback who could run the offense that Norvell, the spread that Norvell likes, and that was Ty Gangio is a pretty good college quarterback, but he has moved on, and that was the question in spring for the Wolfpack as they were looking for a new quarterback. Solano played a little bit in relief of Gangio last year, showed some promise, but is he going to be the guy? Malik Henry, transfer coming in, he might be another guy. They're looking at different options there at quarterback, and they've got to figure that out pretty quick because Purdue comes in for the opener, then they go to Oregon. But the program has trended up. It looks like Norvell has been able also to get some transfers in there who have been able to help. He has a system that is pretty appealing there. They spread the ball around the field. They whip the ball. If they can find a quarterback who can do this thing, they could end up being tough. But that's a tough beginning to the season. And they'll be doing well just to get back to bowl eligibility. The schedule's pretty tough. Everybody likes Norvell, though. Everybody's very happy. He finally got a chance as a head coach. He's a good guy, and I'm glad to see Nevada do well, but it's going to be a pretty bumpy ride those first 2 weeks against Purdue and Oregon, I think.
All right, no mystery at San Diego State. Run, stop the run with Rocky Long, 8 straight bowls. Experience on D, solid secondary, should be good again. Pause for concern, though, Bruce. Lost the last 4 games last year.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, they really collapsed down the stretch. I mean, they were losing games at home as a big favorite to UNLV in Hawaii. And then they got whipped in that bowl game in Frisco, Texas against Ohio. We mentioned that in the MAC preview, 27-0. Frank Solich later whipping on Rocky there. So what did Rocky do? Finally, he's decided to change some things. I mean, we are seeing, you could be San Diego State, see San Diego State running some up-tempo, running some spread this year, running some shotgun. They were installing a lot of this in spring, and the fact that San Diego State might be going to a form of the spread is big news for a Rocky Long offense. First time they didn't have a 1,000-yard rusher in a decade last year, though Juwan Washington is back. He got as close as you could come. He was 999 yards last year, so they'll still have run as part of the offense. They need Ryan Agnew, though, to perform a little bit better at quarterback, and he did last year when he stepped in for Chapman, whose career plateaued a couple of years ago. I'm curious to see how this new offense is going to work, if they're really going to be running as much spread as they say. They also have figured out the stadium situation down there. They're going to be building a new stadium. In the parking lot at They don't call it Qualcomm anymore, STCCU. But they won't tear the old Qualcomm down until this new one is ready. So the thought this program's going to have to go to Petco Park for a couple of years. They don't have to worry about that. So they're feeling better about things at San Diego State. And Rocky, I'm just curious how this offense is going to look if he's really going to start to spread the ball around.
The offense is improving a bit at San Jose State. They can't win games, Bruce, but they're getting to the point where maybe you can trust them a little bit to cover. The schedule's pretty rugged at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I hope they have frequent flyer miles at San Jose State. They play across 5 time zones this year, including as far east as West Point in late October. That would actually be a nice game to go see because, you know, October is up there in West Point. Very pretty with the leaves and all. Yeah, they've also got to go to Hawaii 2 weeks later. By the way, that Army game turned out to be a disaster for them last year, 52-3. They played that one in Santa Clara. They're also hitting the Army without an extra week to prepare before. And in fact, they don't have a week off until after they go to Hawaii. So they're going to be a pretty tired team by the end of the season. But you're right. They have some offense there. They put 50 on UNLV in a win last year. They like their quarterback, Josh Love. If he could stay healthy, he can whip the ball around pretty good. Oliver, their tight end, has moved on to the NFL. He was a pretty good weapon for them last year. But you saw signs of some improvement last year from Brett Brennan. It is a tough assignment up there. I think he has got to keep Love healthy this year. Like you mentioned, that schedule is tough. And for them to have a chance to cover some point spreads, which they might be able to do. I don't think they're going to be bowl contenders this year, but they may cover some point spreads. If they can keep Love healthy, we know they're going to be getting a lot of points in some of these games.
And finally, as we wrap up the Mountain West, Brian Blessing and Bruce Marshall right here, our backyard, UNLV. And this is an intriguing season. Tony Sanchez, the head coach, the time is now. He was instrumental in getting the upgrade in incredible facilities now. You got the new stadium coming next year when the Raiders move here. But at some point, Bruce, you got to start winning on the field. He's got depth on the offensive line. He's got a returning quarterback in Armani Rogers, and he has some home run hitting wide receivers. One winning season the last 18 years, Bruce. You got to start winning.
Yeah, and I guess you could say they're overdue, and Tony needs it bad because the Rebels can go into that new stadium this year off of another losing season. And this has got to be 5 in a row for Tony, and he could not survive that. He is also not working for the AD who hired him. He's got some boosters in his corner here, but bowl or bust for Tony. And there are a couple of things to think about. One, the program has taken a little bit of a jolt here in the offseason. Barney, coordinator, who has fashioned a pretty good chop-busting running game in recent years. UNLV's been able to run the ball on the ground pretty well. Unfortunately, Barney's got some health issues, and he is awaiting a heart transplant, so he is out this year. And so they've had to promote from within to take Cotton's place, but they might miss his presence. The other thing, obviously, you mentioned before, was Armani Rogers, the quarterback. Now, he is a dynamic dual threat. He is maybe too much of a dual threat for his own good. He runs and could get hurt, although the injury he took last year was on a fluky play. It wasn't really running. But he does expose himself there. And they dropped off the map after he got hurt. And by the way, his passing numbers got worse last year. He's got a good arm, but he's very inaccurate. So he's got to tighten things up. He's also got to stay healthy. This ain't going to work if he gets hurt again because they don't have enough depth. And if, Gillum, the backup, wasn't good enough last year. And it's all keeping Rodgers healthy and hopefully getting some improvement out of this defense. No matter what they've tried there, it has not worked on the defensive end, and they ranked 120th in scoring defense last year. If Armani's there, though, they could get to a bowl. If he can stay healthy. By the way, they have 2 non-conference games at Northwestern and Vanderbilt, Power 5 foes. They have played a Power 5 foe on the road each of the last 4 years for Sanchez, and they have covered the spread in each one of those, Michigan, Ohio State, UCLA, and USC. So they'll be getting some points at Northwestern and Vanderbilt. Might provide some value there.
There he has great information again. Bruce Marshall from the legendary publication, The Gold Sheet. I'm Brian Blessing. Bruce, always a treat. Football's just about set to kick off. Having fun doing these previews. Try to get as much information out because I think if you learn about these conferences right out of the gate, some of these nuggets you will be able to apply in the back half of the season.
Yeah, and you know what, Brian? We say this every year. The season goes by pretty quick. So you don't want to sit on the sidelines too long, and before you know it, it's Columbus Day and half the season is over. So be prepared. Watch these teams early. Be prepared to take advantage of some of these trends, and especially the ones that might be carrying through that we've alerted people to. So watch these games from the start because the season goes quick.
Great information, as always, Bruce. Thank you. There you have it. The way of the Mountain West Conference preview as we're getting fired up for college football.
Betmaker, let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com. And reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and/or interpersonal relationships. At Betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling, an approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.